What if the greatest mistake you've been making is believing that your desire belongs in the future? What if the reason manifestation feels slow is because you keep placing your dream somewhere ahead of you, always waiting, always hoping, always expecting that one day life will finally change? Today, I want to share a profound shift in awareness, a shift so powerful that it can completely transform the way you manifest your desires. It is a simple idea, yet it carries extraordinary power. Assume it happened yesterday. Think about that for a moment. Not tomorrow, not next month, not someday, yesterday. Because the moment you stop seeing your desire as a future event, you stop generating the emotional state of lack. You stop chasing, you stop forcing, you stop wondering when it will happen. Instead, you enter a state of completion. The world teaches us to wait for evidence before we believe, but the law of consciousness teaches the opposite. Believe first, assume first, occupy the feeling first, and reality will follow. In this message, we are going to explore what I call the time collapse manifestation method. You will discover why time is not your obstacle, why your identity determines your reality, and how assuming your desire has already happened can accelerate the manifestation process in ways most people never experience. Listen carefully, because this understanding has the power to change not only what you attract, but who you become. Let's begin. Most people spend their lives believing that time is the missing ingredient between where they are and where they want to be. They think success requires more years, abundance requires more waiting, and fulfillment requires more patience. They look at their dreams and then look at the calendar. They measure possibility by days, months, and years. Yet this way of thinking creates one of the greatest illusions that keeps people trapped in cycles of delay. Time itself has never created anything. Time has never produced a single opportunity, relationship, achievement, or manifestation. What truly shapes reality is consciousness. The outer world is not responding to the passing of time, it is responding to the state of awareness that you consistently occupy. The life you are experiencing today is the visible expression of assumptions, beliefs, and expectations that have been active within you, often for far longer than you realize. Think about how many people say things like, "One day I will be successful," "One day I will find happiness," or "One day my breakthrough will come." While these statements may sound hopeful, they contain a hidden message. They place fulfillment somewhere in the future. They train the mind to believe that what is desired is always ahead, never here. As long as the mind remains focused on a future fulfillment, it unconsciously reinforces the feeling of not having it now. And that feeling of lack becomes the dominant state of consciousness. The problem is not that the dream is impossible. The problem is that the individual continues to identify with the version of themselves that does not yet possess it. The creative power within every person operates according to identity and assumption. It mirrors what you accept as true about yourself. If you believe you are someone who is struggling, reality continues to reflect struggle. If you believe you are someone who is always waiting for opportunities, life continues presenting reasons to wait. The outer world becomes a mirror reflecting the inner state. This is why two people can face similar circumstances yet experience completely different outcomes. One sees obstacles and delay, while the other sees possibilities and movement. Their environments may look similar, but their consciousness is different, and consciousness is always the determining factor. Many people imagine that manifestation is about forcing the external world to change. They spend their energy trying to manipulate conditions, convince others, or chase opportunities. Yet the deeper truth is that transformation begins within. The moment consciousness changes, a new reality begins to unfold. This is not because circumstances are magically altered overnight, but because the individual is no longer operating from the same mental and emotional position. They begin making different decisions, noticing different opportunities, and responding to life from a different level of certainty. What once seemed impossible starts becoming natural because their inner world has shifted. Consider someone who desires financial abundance. If they continue thinking like a person who lacks resources, fears loss, and expects limitation, then even new opportunities may pass unnoticed. Their consciousness filters reality through scarcity. But when they begin identifying as someone who is capable, valuable, and supported by life, their perception changes. They start recognizing possibilities that were always present but previously invisible to them. The external improvement appears to be the result of time, but in reality, it was the result of a change in awareness. The distance between your present condition and your desired future is not measured by years. It is measured by belief. It is measured by the assumptions you accept and the identity you choose to occupy. The moment you genuinely accept a new state of consciousness, you begin collapsing the gap between where you are and where you wish to be. What seemed far away starts moving closer because you are no longer emotionally separated from it. This is why the principle of assuming it happened yesterday is so powerful. It removes the illusion that fulfillment belongs in the future. It shifts your attention away from waiting and places it into possession. Instead of asking how long it will take, you begin asking how you would think and feel if it were already done. That shift changes everything. When consciousness changes, reality follows. The true barrier was never time. The true barrier was believing that time had power over what only consciousness can create. One of the most transformative shifts a person can make is learning to live from the result rather than constantly moving toward it. Most people spend their lives in pursuit. They pursue success, pursue happiness, pursue financial freedom, pursue relationships, and pursue opportunities. Their entire way of thinking is built around the idea that fulfillment exists somewhere ahead of them. They wake up each day believing that what they desire is still out of reach and that they must continue striving until they finally arrive at the destination. While this approach appears logical, it contains a hidden problem. Every time you pursue something, you reinforce the belief that you do not already possess it. The act of chasing keeps your attention fixed on the absence of the thing you want, and whatever dominates your awareness eventually shapes your experience. The principle of living from the result operates in a completely different way. Instead of focusing on obtaining the desire, you focus on embodying the state of the person who has already received it. You stop identifying as someone who is trying to become successful and begin thinking from the perspective of someone who already is. You stop seeing yourself as a person waiting for abundance and start operating from the awareness that abundance is already part of your reality. This is not about pretending or denying current circumstances. It is about choosing which state of consciousness you will occupy. The outer world reflects the inner state, and therefore the most effective way to change external conditions is to first change the internal experience. Imagine someone who desires a fulfilling career. Most people in that situation spend their days worrying about how it will happen, when it will happen, and whether it will happen at all. Their thoughts are filled with uncertainty. Their emotions are shaped by waiting. Their conversations often revolve around what they lack. Even when opportunities appear, they may approach them from a place of fear, because they still identify as someone who has not yet arrived. Now imagine that same individual adopting a different perspective. Instead of living toward the result, they begin living from it. They ask themselves, How would I think if I already had the career I desire? How would I carry myself? How would I speak? What would I expect from life? As they begin answering these questions and embodying those qualities, their consciousness shifts. Their actions become more confident. Their decisions become more aligned. Their expectations begin to rise. The external world starts responding to the new state they have accepted within. One of the greatest benefits of living from the result is that it removes the emotional burden of constant striving. When people are always trying to get somewhere, they often experience stress, frustration, and impatience. They feel trapped between their current reality and their desired future. Every delay feels painful because they believe fulfillment remains distant. But when you live from the result, you stop measuring progress every day. You stop obsessing over evidence. You stop demanding proof that something is happening. Instead, you rest in the feeling that the desire is already fulfilled. This creates a sense of peace and certainty that cannot be produced through endless effort alone. The idea of assuming it happened yesterday fits perfectly with this principle. If your desire had truly been fulfilled yesterday, how would you feel today? You would not wake up anxious about whether it was coming. You would not spend the day searching for signs. You would not be desperate for confirmation. You would simply move through life with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing it is already done. This feeling is the key. The state of completion carries a different energy than the state of longing. One is rooted in possession, while the other is rooted in lack. Living from the result also changes the way you interpret challenges. Obstacles no longer appear as evidence that your desire is impossible. Instead, they become temporary events that cannot alter the reality you have already accepted within yourself. You begin seeing circumstances as passing shadows rather than permanent barriers. Your faith becomes stronger because it is no longer dependent on appearances. It is based on identity. You know who you are, and that certainty guides your responses regardless of what is happening around you. Ultimately, manifestation is not about chasing a future event. It is about becoming the person who already lives in that reality. The moment you stop living toward the result and start living from it, everything begins to change. Your thoughts change, your emotions change, your expectations change, and as your consciousness changes, reality gradually reorganizes itself to match the state you consistently occupy. The secret is simple but powerful. Stop acting like someone waiting for fulfillment and begin thinking, feeling, and living like someone for whom the desire is already an accomplished fact. One of the greatest obstacles to manifestation is not a lack of ability, resources, opportunity, or even knowledge. The greatest obstacle is resistance. Resistance is the invisible force that appears whenever a person desires something deeply, but continually notices its absence. It is the tension between where you are and where you want to be. It is the emotional struggle created by constantly asking, why isn't it here yet? Every time a person focuses on the delay, they strengthen the feeling that fulfillment remains distant. They begin measuring their progress by what they can see, hear, and touch. And when immediate evidence is missing, doubt begins to grow. This doubt creates resistance, and resistance slows the very thing they are trying to achieve. The yesterday principle offers a powerful solution to this problem. Instead of viewing your desire as something that will happen in the future, you deliberately assume it happened yesterday. This may sound simple, but it produces a profound psychological and emotional shift. Think about how you would feel if your greatest desire had genuinely been fulfilled yesterday. Would you spend today worrying about whether it was coming? Would you spend hours checking for signs? Would you constantly wonder if it would ever happen? Of course not. You would move through the day with a sense of relief, certainty, and completion. The struggle would disappear because the event would already be behind you. The desire would no longer exist as a possibility. It would exist as a fact. This change in perspective is incredibly important because manifestation is strongly influenced by your dominant emotional state. A person who constantly worries about when something will happen is operating from a state of lack. A person who feels that it has already happened is operating from a state of fulfillment. The external goal may be the same, but the internal experience is completely different. One creates tension while the other creates peace. One keeps the desire in the future, while the other brings it into the present moment of awareness. Many people unknowingly create resistance through their daily habits of thought. They wake up and immediately check their circumstances. They look for evidence that something is changing. If they do not see immediate results, disappointment follows. That disappointment reinforces doubt, and doubt strengthens the belief that the desire is still far away. This cycle repeats itself day after day. The mind becomes trapped in a pattern of wanting rather than having. As long as a person remains emotionally attached to the absence of the desire, they continue feeding resistance. The yesterday principle interrupts this cycle completely. When you assume it happened yesterday, you stop treating your desire like an unfinished project. Instead, you begin treating it like a completed experience. Your focus shifts from acquisition to appreciation. Your attention moves away from waiting and toward acceptance. The emotional pressure begins to dissolve because there is nothing left to force. You are no longer trying to make something happen. You are learning to rest in the assumption that it already has. Consider how different your mindset becomes when you adopt this perspective. If a wonderful event happened yesterday, you would not spend today begging for it to happen again. You would simply acknowledge it as part of your reality. You would carry yourself differently. Your thoughts would be calmer. Your conversations would reflect confidence rather than uncertainty. Even your body language would communicate assurance. This is the hidden power of the yesterday principle. It changes your emotional atmosphere, and your emotional atmosphere influences every aspect of your life. Another reason this principle is so effective is that it removes desperation. Desperation often arises when people believe their happiness depends on obtaining something they do not yet have. They place all their emotional energy into the future and become dependent on external circumstances for inner peace. The yesterday principle reverses this process. It encourages you to experience the emotional reward first. Instead of waiting for reality to give you peace, you choose peace before reality changes. Instead of waiting for certainty, you embody certainty now. This shift places you in a position of inner strength rather than emotional dependence. As resistance fades, your awareness becomes more open and receptive. Opportunities become easier to recognize. Intuition becomes clearer. Decisions become more aligned with your desired outcome. What once felt difficult begins to feel natural because you are no longer fighting against your own assumptions. You are no longer sending mixed signals through fear and doubt. Your mind, emotions, and expectations begin moving in the same direction. The true beauty of the yesterday principle is that it teaches you to release the struggle without abandoning the vision. You still know what you desire, but you no longer chase it with anxiety. You hold it with confidence. You carry it with calm assurance. You live from the feeling that it is already part of your reality. And in doing so, you eliminate the resistance that has been standing between you and the manifestation of your desire. The moment you stop resisting fulfillment and start assuming completion, you create the inner environment where transformation can naturally occur. One of the most powerful truths a person can discover is that reality does not simply respond to what you want, it responds to who you believe you are. Many people spend years focusing on changing their circumstances while never addressing the identity that produced those circumstances in the first place. They desire greater success, stronger relationships, improved health, or financial freedom, yet they continue thinking, feeling, and behaving as the same person who created their current results. This creates an internal conflict. They want a new reality, but they remain loyal to an old identity. Until that identity changes, the external world often continues reflecting the same patterns, limitations, and experiences. Every achievement, every manifestation, and every transformation begins with a shift in self-concept. Before something becomes visible in your world, it first becomes accepted within your consciousness. This is why two people can have access to the same opportunities and resources yet produce completely different outcomes. The difference is often not found in the circumstances themselves, but in the identities those individuals have accepted. One person sees themselves as capable, worthy, and destined for growth. The other sees themselves as limited, unlucky, or unqualified. Their actions naturally follow their beliefs, and over time their realities begin reflecting those internal assumptions. Most people underestimate the power of identity because they focus primarily on external goals. They think success comes from acquiring something outside themselves. They believe happiness will arrive when a certain condition is met. Yet the deeper truth is that external achievements are usually the result of an internal transformation that occurred first. The person who becomes successful does not merely receive success, they become the kind of individual who naturally expresses the qualities associated with it. Confidence, discipline, vision, expectation, persistence, and self-belief emerge from identity. Once these qualities become part of a person's self-concept, the outer results begin to follow. This is why the principle of assuming it happened yesterday is so effective. When you assume your desire was fulfilled yesterday, you automatically begin stepping into a new identity. You stop identifying as someone who is waiting and start identifying as someone who has already received. The shift may seem subtle, but its impact is profound. A person who believes their dream is still far away thinks differently from a person who believes it is already accomplished. Their emotional state is different. Their expectations are different. Their decisions are different. Their entire way of engaging with life begins to change. Imagine someone who desires financial abundance. If they continue seeing themselves as a person struggling to survive, their choices will often reflect fear and limitation. They may hesitate to take opportunities, doubt their value, and expect disappointment. Even when favorable circumstances appear, they may fail to recognize them because their identity filters reality through scarcity. But the moment they begin identifying as a person who is capable, resourceful, and worthy of abundance, everything starts shifting. Their confidence grows. Their willingness to act increases. Their perception expands. The external changes may not happen overnight, but the internal transformation has already begun. And that transformation is what ultimately produces new results. The same principle applies to every area of life. A person who desires a loving relationship must stop identifying as someone who is constantly rejected or unworthy of love. A person seeking success must stop identifying as someone who always fails. A person pursuing personal growth must stop defining themselves by past mistakes. The old identity cannot produce a new future. To experience a different reality, you must first become a different version of yourself in consciousness. One of the reasons many people remain stuck is that they are emotionally attached to their old story. They continuously repeat narratives about what went wrong, who hurt them, what they lack, or why life has been unfair. While these experiences may have been real, they do not have to define the future. Every time a person repeats an old story, they strengthen the identity connected to it. Every time they focus on a limitation, they reinforce it within their consciousness. Transformation begins when a person decides to stop worshipping their past and start embracing a greater vision of who they can become. Identity is the foundation upon which reality is built. Your thoughts, emotions, habits, expectations, and actions all flow from the image you hold of yourself. Change that image, and you begin changing everything connected to it. This is why true manifestation is not merely about attracting things, it is about becoming. It is about accepting a new self-concept so completely that it starts influencing every aspect of your life. When you assume your desire happened yesterday, you are doing more than imagining a future event. You are adopting the identity of the person who has already experienced it. You are teaching your mind to think from fulfillment rather than longing. You are training your emotions to reflect completion rather than lack. And as this new identity becomes natural, the world around you begins adjusting to match it. Reality always mirrors consciousness. Therefore, the fastest way to change your world is to change the person you believe yourself to be. Once identity changes, reality has no choice but to follow. One of the greatest challenges people face on the journey of manifestation is maintaining faith. When external circumstances appear unchanged, it is easy to feel confident when results are visible. It is easy to believe when everything seems to be moving in the desired direction. The true test comes when there is no immediate evidence, when the outer world looks exactly the same, and when the desire appears no closer than it did before. This is the point where many people abandon their assumptions, return to doubt, and unknowingly interrupt the very process they have begun. Yet every great transformation requires persistence. The ability to remain faithful to a chosen state of consciousness, regardless of appearances, is one of the most powerful qualities a person can develop. Most people have been conditioned to believe only what they can see. They rely on circumstances to determine their emotional state. If things are improving, they feel hopeful. If challenges arise, they feel discouraged. Their confidence rises and falls according to external conditions. However, manifestation operates according to a different principle. The outer world is not the cause, it is the effect. It reflects previous states of consciousness. What you experience today often represents thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions that have been active within you long before the current moment. Understanding this principle changes everything because it teaches you not to judge your future by your present circumstances. Imagine planting a seed in the ground. The moment you place it beneath the soil, you cannot immediately see the results. Days may pass without visible evidence of growth. If you judge the seed solely by what you could see, you might conclude that nothing is happening. Yet beneath the surface, important processes are already taking place. Roots are forming. Life is developing. Growth is occurring even though it remains invisible. Manifestation works in much the same way. The moment you adopt a new assumption and consistently occupy the feeling of fulfillment, changes begin occurring within consciousness. Those changes may not immediately appear in the physical world, but that does not mean they are absent. The process is already underway. This is why persistence is essential. The person who persists understands that reality takes shape from sustained belief rather than momentary enthusiasm. Many people become excited after hearing a powerful idea. They feel inspired for a few days and begin imagining their desired outcome. But when circumstances fail to change immediately, they become discouraged. They return to old patterns of thinking and start questioning whether anything is working. As a result, they continually move back and forth between faith and doubt. Their consciousness becomes divided and their progress slows. Persistence eliminates this instability. It allows a person to remain anchored in the desired state regardless of temporary appearances. The principle of assuming it happened yesterday becomes especially valuable during these moments. If your desire truly happened yesterday, would today's challenges convince you that it never occurred? Of course not. You would continue moving through life with certainty because you would already know the outcome. This is the mindset you must cultivate. Refuse to allow temporary circumstances to dictate your assumptions. Refuse to let appearances define your reality. Instead, continue returning to the feeling that your desire is already fulfilled. The physical world may take time to rearrange itself, but your responsibility is not to force the process. Your responsibility is to remain faithful to the state you have chosen. Persistence does not mean struggling. It does not mean constantly repeating affirmations from a place of fear. It does not mean obsessing over your desire every moment of the day. True persistence is much quieter. It is the calm decision to continue believing despite the absence of immediate evidence. It is the willingness to return to your chosen assumption whenever doubt appears. It is the discipline of maintaining an inner conviction that does not depend on external validation. This type of persistence creates emotional stability and allows you to move through life with confidence rather than anxiety. History is filled with examples of people who succeeded because they refused to abandon their vision. They encountered setbacks, delays, and obstacles, yet they continued acting from the belief that their goal was achievable. What separated them from others was not necessarily greater talent or better circumstances. It was their ability to persist. They remained committed to an inner reality long enough for it to become an outer reality. The same principle applies to manifestation. The person who consistently occupies the state of fulfillment eventually begins seeing corresponding changes in the physical world. As you continue practicing the time-collapse manifestation method, remember that persistence is the bridge between assumption and visible results. Your task is not to control every detail of how your desire unfolds. Your task is to remain loyal to the feeling that it is already accomplished. Continue thinking from the result. Continue identifying with the version of yourself who has already received. Continue carrying the confidence, peace, and certainty of fulfillment. Let the world say what it wants. Let circumstances appear however they appear. Remain steadfast in your assumption. Sooner or later, the physical world must reflect the state you consistently occupy. Reality cannot permanently resist a sustained belief. The outer world is always moving to mirror the dominant patterns within consciousness. Therefore, do not quit because you cannot yet see the evidence. Persist because you understand the principle. Persist because you know that what is accepted internally will eventually become visible externally. Persist until the physical world agrees with what your consciousness has already declared to be true. When that happens, you will realize that the manifestation was never a matter of if, it was only a matter of remaining faithful long enough for reality to catch up with your belief. As we come to the end of this message, remember one truth above all else: your future is not created by time. It is created by consciousness. The world may tell you that you must wait. Circumstances may suggest that nothing is changing. The calendar may seem to move slowly. But the creative power within you is not bound by clocks, dates, or timelines. The moment you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you begin moving into a different reality. So stop asking, when will it happen? Instead ask, how would I think, feel, and act if it had happened yesterday? That single question has the power to transform your entire state of being. Walk away from this message with certainty. Let go of the struggle. Release the need to force outcomes. Refuse to live as someone waiting for life to begin. Become the person for whom the desire is already an accomplished fact. Think from it, feel from it, live from it, and persist in that state until the physical world reflects what your consciousness has already accepted as true. Remember, manifestation is not about creating something new. It is about becoming aware of what is already yours. Assume it happened yesterday, and watch what happens next. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If this message inspired you, encouraged you, or helped you see manifestation from a new perspective, take a moment to support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who needs to hear this message. Leave a comment below with the words, "I assume it is already done." Let that declaration be your commitment to a new state of consciousness. Thank you for being part of this growing community. Until next time, continue to guard your thoughts, elevate your assumptions, and live from the reality you choose to create. Take care and remember, the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the secret.